All right, everybody. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day so far. Sorry it took me a second there to pop in. I looking for a one of my nib replacements for my uh XP pen here. I realized that my nib was turning into a uh really sharp. So what we're doing today is we are doing the this is gonna be the last OC art raffle winner before I move it over to a Patreon reward. Sorry, I dropped the one that I just took out and I have no idea where it went, so I guess I'll have to find it later. But anyway, Suitree is our final winner before I switch this over. Like I said, don't worry, the OC art raffle, even though it's gonna be moved to Patreon, will not be like some terribly like expensive tier or anything. So, the max tier that I think I'm even gonna put on it is like $5. So I'll have like a $1 tier and I'll have like a $5 tier. And then the $5 tier will be the one that has like the more special things in it. So thinking the $1 tier will be the OC art raffle. So anyway, yo, Suitree, there you are. Hell yeah. I guess you got I got my tag on Discord. I'm so sorry. I totally meant to tag you earlier that you had actually won here. Anyway, let's get rolling here. This is the sketch I came up with last night. Luckily, I was able to find your OC Q&A on the threads in the Discord, so I had an idea of setting up your OC here. Got her weaving together some like galaxies with the different colored threads and whatnot. Thought it would look cool, and then I found like these like Art Nuevo like frames, and I made them like real like subtle put around it, almost like it's like an art card. So I thought that would be kind of neat. But anyway, so this is the sketch. I think what I'm gonna do here is I need to turn off the background for a little bit so I can see what I'm doing to do the line work. So I'm gonna stick that in a folder. Oh, I'm glad you like it. I'm about to, yeah, about to go ahead and do like the line work for it. And your character is pretty simple, which is nice. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So should be able to get this done fairly quickly here. So let's turn off the background real quick. Let me lower this opacity down to like 50, and I can start doing the actual line work. It makes me happy that you like it so far, though. All right, let's start up here. This is actually good for me too because I've been trying to uh work on like simplifying OCs and characters so I can just use like the values and the rendering to make that more of like the focus. So like all my stuff isn't like super like complex and takes like absolutely forever to draw. Because in reality, it's not like the line work and the drawing and all that stuff that I enjoy. It's actually the rendering and like the value work and all that. So I'm trying to shift my focus more towards focusing on the aspects of art that I actually like enjoy the most. So this is a perfect example of that. Also, I've been watching more videos from like professionals and like, a lot of them, like the advice I've seen is, instead of going like hog wild with details, uh, things become more iconic if you focus on like the specific things that make them like unique. Like, pare it down, like, yeah, this is Suitree's OC. They actually create galaxies and universes using different threads. So I definitely leaned into that. Yeah, it's a cool OC. And I like the trope of having like the eyes covered because she's shy. I actually like characters like that, so we're gonna roll with that as well. But yeah, just doing the more solidified line work here, the finalized line work. And I always add at least a little bit of like detail, like especially in like the hair. That's usually where I focus my detail on now. And then I try to do like the composition of the piece based around getting a flow up to like the head, the face. And I am almost done with the background on your commission, Three Frogs. So that is like the main bulk of the commission is like almost done already. So pretty excited that it's moving along pretty smoothly, pretty cleanly there. Of course, I'm having fun doing it as well. That's always an important part of art is to make sure that you're enjoying it. But once I get that actual background done, I'll send you a an update before I start working on Octavia herself. So, and I'll send the sketch for that as well before I finalize it, so you can make sure that you like the outfit and everything. I do like this brush now that I started using it too, because it's got some like nice like texture. It doesn't look as like, I guess, artificial as like the mapping pen I was using before. The mapping pen though is good for like certain things though, so I'll still use it every now. So I went from like the G pen to the mapping pen, And now to this Mark Burnett inking pen here, just in case anybody's curious about what I'm using. If you go to his YouTube, there's a link to his Cube Brush store, and that's where you can get his free brush packs. In case you guys want to, try them out. It's a pretty good for like a free brush pack. It's pretty awesome. Definitely gives you a lot of like texturing and different tools that are give you a variety of things. So I'm also just yapping away here, so don't mind me. But yeah, if you want to learn to draw as well, make sure you definitely check out Mark Burnett. Like, absolutely, like, goated advice, excellent artist. He's worked for like Riot and Blizzard and all sorts of like big time companies, so I trust the advice. Trying to make sure that her face is still a little bit round because I remember seeing in your description that in her little like pocket universe where she exists, she's only like 16, so have that baby fat still on the face. Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I don't take everything like bar for bar, but I definitely I just watch like a bunch of like professional artists on YouTube, and I just kind of like the thing is like taking the advice and just kind of like molding it and modifying it to your own personal style, your own workflow until you get something that's like you get like the most like effective and solid like workflow. Because once you like lock down like a specific workflow, you can pump out like a lot of work really quickly. Like your productivity will go through the roof. That's actually one of the reasons like Three Frogs Commission is coming along so much faster. Because when I was working on those other ones, I was like kind of like messing around with like different things that I didn't really have like a workflow that was like really good for that project in particular I was working on, so that's why it took so goddamn long. Sometimes I get excited and I want to try new things, and I should save those for personal projects instead of like, you know, client work. I'm just like always like trying different things. Oh yeah. No, I try to, I try different things because I don't want my art to get stale. And then also like I like learning like new skills and whatnot. So it's okay. Yeah, it looks alright. Yeah, what I've learned to do is I'll do 80% comfort zone and then I'll do 20% for like experimentation for fun. That way, like I know I can still like, achieve a good result. some slime. Have it applied there that it's. Oh yeah. Hey, you are more than welcome to, to take notes and like I try to think of I try to like simplify the hair forms into like big shapes. Then I cut it up a little bit more into like medium stuff. But I try to think of the way they like would like overlap or, lay in like 3D space. And then at the end I add like little like flyaway strands to, show some more like movement. It's nothing really like it's not really that complex. It's just I mean sometimes I get a little like carried away, especially with like, like the flyaway strands and stuff like that, but it's pretty easy to replicate. And I have zero problem with anybody like, replicating my work. As long as like, you're not like saying, "Hey, like I did." You're not like copying like 100%. But again, most of the stuff that I learned from like other artists anyway. So I was just, I just find techniques that I like from other artists and I just adapt it, into my own style. So, but yeah, if you ever need any more like tips or anything, that's another thing I'll probably end up doing like with my Patreon is I'll probably end up doing like some tips about how I do things. So, it actually makes me happy that people really like the way that I do things and want to learn to emulate it. I know sometimes people get like upset about that for some reason. It's like, well, that's how everybody learns art, you know? Like nobody's like 100% like original. You just try to like take what you've learned and make it your own, like the best you can. I don't know. I really like drawing hair, so I think that has like a big influence on why I do that. But I also like I focus on it so heavily because it's like, the where I want the attention to be is like on like the head, the face. So I try to do the most detailed parts of my work around those areas. But if you want to have like a tip on how to kind of like think about the structure, it's kind of like almost like I think of them about up like ribbons, kind of like bending around like a 3D space, like extending from the points of the hair. Like this one, like I assume that her hairline is like kind of like a center thing, so all of them are kind of coming off of the shape of the skull from this like center point here. Brush is not cool. I want here. Like, see, this is kind of like the outer part of like the ribbon, and then this is like the underside of where it would like twist, kind of how I'm thinking about it. And then I'll have like another the underside kind of come out here as well, and then you just kind of add little like flyaways to like have it so there's like separations. I don't know. Like art always like techniques and stuff always look like, oh my god, how am I gonna do that? That's so crazy and complicated. And what you have to do is just break things down into simpler, smaller steps and then execute them in that like, way that you've broken it down, and then it becomes like way easier. Like to me, when I talk to people about why I like art so much, I mean, it's not only, creating like, beautiful images and things like that. To me, it's like a really fun like puzzle, like problem solving kind of exercise. Because it's like, all right, well, how do I get this like result that I want? Like, you know, because you're not gonna get it like 100% off the bat. Like, you gotta work towards like finding the little solutions that eventually culminate together to create the visual like solution that you're looking for. It's like testing in like, like science and like hypothesis. It's like you're like, this is how I think they got here. And then if you don't have an actual tutorial by them to like, look up or check or whatever, then you just do like a process of elimination with your hypotheses to see like, all right, well, I think they did this, and then maybe this, and then if that doesn't work, then you just scrap it until you get like, something that does work for you. I don't know. I think the main thing is just to remember like that the with the hair especially, it's just that the skull is rounded and hair doesn't sit flat generally against the skull. So you want to try to give it like some volume, um because it's gonna like lift up off the skull in some places depending on the hairstyle. And like I said, I try to add like the dynamics with like the flyaways and stuff just to give it some movement, even if like the hairstyle itself doesn't necessarily always have that sense of movement. But if the posing suggests that there is movement, you should definitely add those little like flyaways and try to adjust the form to show that it's moving in that direction. Easier said than done, but just the thought process. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually, and I've seen Mitsuki do this as well. I'll take like a big flat brush, right? I'll pick a color, and then I'll mark where like the hairline is like this, and then I would take like a colored brush, and I'd be like, all right, I want this section to be like this shape here, right? And then I'll take a different color and I'll go, something like this, where it's like big and flat, so it's like the whole form. And this is before I have like lines down. So I'll do like that. And then I'll trace over what I'll do is I'll like lower this down to like 30%. And then I would trace the form on the outside. And then I would add the details like in between to, make it work. So that way it gives your brain like a visual, like, hey, this is the shape that I'm going for. And then you can have like the lines, like, go from there. I do that sometimes. I do that with like clothing and like folds as well. If I'm having trouble imagining like where the lines would go, I'll try to like lay down like the form first. One thing I do need to get away from is I have been relying a lot on the 3D models in Clip Studio Paint for like my posing and stuff like that. So that's something I need to try to get away from. It's just really difficult, especially like, I need to learn like dynamic like perspective and stuff like that. So I can start doing my own like dynamic poses rather than relying on like posing a 3D model and doing like I'll do like the manga like distortion and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I try to like, I'm trying to break it down into like ways that are easier for my brain personally to understand. I mean, honestly, I think in art, like the number one thing, like especially when people are learning, is the number one skill you should probably try to do is learning to break things into shapes. And I know you probably hear that from artists all the time, but it's true. Like seriously, like if you can't convey the shape of something, it's never gonna like come off as being like 3D. It's always gonna have that like, flat look to it. But then, what artists usually don't tell you is their own little personal tricks to, visualize that kind of thing. They're like, oh, just break it down into shapes. It's like, well, how do I do that? Like, you just gotta find like a method that, your brain clicks with, that you get that aha moment, like, oh, okay, I can visualize it now. It's not just like some like abstract concept like, oh, break it down into shapes. It's like, well, how do I do that? Like, oh, gotta figure out what works for you. It's gonna be different for everybody as far as like how your brain like interprets things. I think I need to lower the sketch opacity a little bit more. There we go. Now I can see what's going on. And you definitely want to flip back and forth too, just to make sure like you're not staying in one view for too long, because your brain will get tricked into thinking, hey, this is how it's supposed to look. And I have astigmatism really bad in both my eyes. So like I have trouble like lining things up, and I also am like slightly dyslexic as well, just by default. So flipping it back and forth is a good way to see that you might be making like, mistakes. And then you just use like, you either redo the lines manually or you use your liquify tool to, kind of push things around. The only thing that kind of sucks with Clip Studio Paint's liquify tool is that it will make like some of the lines kind of blurry and fuzzy. So you might need to go like back over them like a few times just to get like the clarity back. I mean, there might be like an adjustment like in the program, like maybe like a setting or a preference or something that can fix that. Like I imagine if I could figure out how to take like a vector layer and use the liquify tool on it, it'll probably work, because like vector layers work on like a mathematical formula versus like raster layers. So no matter what size or manipulation you do to it, it's going to remain the same, like pixel width and height and all that. I just haven't taken the time to really go in and with like the technical aspects of clip. Like the settings and whatnot. I haven't messed with it. I'm sure there's like a lot more I could do. Make these sleeves a little more poofy here. Hey, Nepha, how's it going? Oh my god, I still haven't done the save one yet. I'm so sorry. I need to put that on there. I'm gonna continue with my empty promises of one day putting a save check on there. Nempa's like, you just string me along with your pretty little lies. uh I don't want to be a bad VTuber friend. I'm sorry. I promise it's not on purpose. You feeling all right today? Oh, you missed it earlier, Nefa. So I have decided that I am going to move the OC art raffle to a Patreon thing, but it's only going to be like $1 for this tier. Um, and then I'm gonna have like a $5 tier where you get like some more rewards. So, and that's it. I'm not going higher than like $5 like for like Patreon. Not to mention like I don't want to like come up with like too many things that I can't physically fulfill in like a short period of time. So we're gonna start small and not stress ourselves out. That's my goal at least. So I gotta be honest with you, like streaming takes like if I had sponsorships, I'd probably make some better money like quicker. Or if I had like, more like subs. But it literally takes like months to get like the $50 like payout limit. Unless you're like a huge like super well known streamer. Then you have like a bunch of people. Chin. I got one big one up early. That was sad. It's kind of this way. I mean, I'm just lucky like a good amount of you guys like even show up, which I really appreciate. I don't know if I've like said that like enough. Like I really appreciate everybody that shows up to these streams, everybody that watches my VODs. Like you guys are all awesome. I love you guys. Coming, keeping me company, encouraging me that I'm doing a good job and that you like my art and I'm not like a weirdo. I mean, I know I'm a little weird. I mean, hell, like all artists are a little weird. Honestly, if you're not weird as an artist, you're doing it wrong. My personal opinion. Might be some cope, but Yeah, exactly. Got to have a little bit of a different outlook on things, and you know, the fact that we see the world and we see things like differently, I think contributes to that. Yeah, exactly. And usually it's the quote unquote normal people that end up being like the psychopaths, the shooters, and the horrible like domestic terrorists and all that kind of stuff because of the lack of like empathy, creativity. That's just a generalization. Though. Don't take that you know as gospel. Just my person. I just want to make my art, get along with everybody, and have a great life. Is that too much to ask? Life is more fun when you have more friends than you have enemies. So I love this Perfect Circle song. This is a cover. It's good. All right, getting there. I mean, especially since like the hair is the most complicated part. So, or at least the upper hair part will be done. Gotta finish. What am I doing with the nose here? trying to have like the noses be like, like they have like a shape but still be kind of like stylized a little bit like anime. Like not 100% anime, but oh, that nostril crazy. Like, why does this look weird? This is why we flip our canvas. Oh, hold on, we can also this way. Seems okay. I'll leave it for now. Speaking of which, I finished the Detroit Come Human playthrough yesterday. I did pretty good. I got 2 out of 3 good endings. I actually messed up on Kara and Alice, which is funny because like I think that's the one that I originally thought I was doing the best on, and then like first I messed up with like like the cop like coming in and finding the deviants in uh the lady's house, and then I messed up trying to save Jerry. So I ended up getting scrapped. I was like, no. All right, I just need to check this finger here where I kind of do use the 3D here to assist me, especially with the hands. So I can see them. Turn third area. Let's see. Again, like perspective is something that I really need to take some time to work on. Luckily, I am quite familiar with foreshortening because when I was into comic books, uh, Todd McFarlane was like my favorite like comic artist, and he was like the shit at foreshortening because he was doing it with Spodermans. Foreshortening is a really cool technique too, and something that's coming forward more. I don't always do this, but I should do it more. You want to make the lines. Well, you can make the lines thicker, is what I should say. Not necessarily that you have to, but it's just kind of like this weird like visual trick that if you make the lines that are closer to the viewer more bold, like thicker, and then make the lines that are farther away like thinner, That gives like an illusion of depth. Not required though. And you also don't have to do the lines for where the nails are. I just kind of do that. Usually anime style they don't show that, but for me it kind of helps with like the structure of like the fingers themselves. And also like with fingers, so like the top part of the finger is going to be flatter, so you can use like a, you know, more like straight lines towards the bottom. I mean towards the top. And then at the bottom you want to, oh wait, this one. And you don't always have to put the lines for every. I just realized I did this wrong. Really looking. There we go. It's like this. I was talking all that good shit. Now I'm finding mistakes. So, like, oh yeah, I'm good at foreshortening, and then I'm just like, wait a minute, not doing this right, man. Mr. Anarchy. But like I was saying about like the nails, like I feel like learning where it's like where the nails sit is like kind of like a flat plane, like this way, like on top of the tip of the finger. I think that really helped me like think about the shape of fingers a little bit more. And it's got like this little ridge above it that kind of like wraps around it. And then you just like I said, you flatten off the top and you round the bottom. Now I'm not saying I could go ahead and draw like a full realism like hand and have it make it look good. Like it's still gonna be stylized, but also like knowing like the direction that the nails are pointing really helps with like where you need to put your lines and stuff. And it helps you like with like the perspective of where like the finger actually is. And then of course there's space in between the fingers. So you want to make sure that you include that as well. Yeah, it's looking. Oh yeah. So the wrist there. Put this. Let's see. So it's like big poofy sleeves. So this is actually somewhere I might use that technique I was talking about earlier. So I'll get this. I'll get a big flat brush. Get like shape, kind of like the big shape here. And then there's going to be cut off by like the forearm area. So I'm going to do that. It's going to be here and there for the. Now, the type of fold this would be too would be where it's like wrapping around the arm here. Just kind of want to break it up into like that it's kind of going like one way and the other. It's kind of like a twisty fold. And then there's like tension points over here. So that's what it's kind of just lower the opacity. And then I can kind of like think about the line work from here. If I do it on the right layer. Oh, that. And wrap around like this back in on itself. This might also like a triangular fold here. Another really good video. I mean, all of his videos are good, but Mark's got a video about the 7 types of folds. That way you can break the folds into like different categories so you get an idea of how each fold behaves and when and where to use them. Super super helpful. Sometimes I forget though and I have to go back and watch the video again. But generally if it's something like where it's like on the arm, it's generally going to be like this one where it's like wrapped around it, like twisting in 2 different directions. Unless the arm is like straight down and the material is kind of just like hanging. Hey, what's up, Annie? How's it going? Of course, you have to think about gravity too, because gravity is also going to be pulling the fabric down. Yeah, I'm pretty tired myself. So we'll probably get this and then this and do like that. And then we need some tension going this way. Yeah, I think the hardest part with folds is also like the tension points and not having like too many lines. Because you want like, I'm focusing more on like the values for uh expressing like the folds and the tension and all that. So try to simplify it as much as you can with the lines. So yeah, our AC is busted, so like my sleep has been like total garbage. And continue up this way. Uh, go about that. It's probably good. Let me get that off. Yeah, I think that looks fine. It might be too many lines, but I think it'll be alright. When I go to do like the rendering, should balance it out some. To do the values and all that. And I like to thicken the lines up wherever they touch with other areas. Elbow there. Again, this is short. So, and she's got the wraps. Wraps go the direction. A little bit of tension in there. Some a lot of this forearm. Maybe I think I am. All right. So let's use this again. Rid of this because I don't need it. Need to do Need to visualize here. Forum's going to be kind of. There needs to be a line separation there. Like using this method is great because you can, if you can't quite visualize exactly where things are in relations to each other, it's like so helpful. Like especially if it's something that's behind another object here, works out real well. We're gonna have her sleeve kind of like come out this way. There we go. That helps a lot. It's like a lighter here. Also, actually needs to go it's this way. It's the curve. You know what? Flip it this way. That should help. And we're gonna put a little bit off the silhouette here just to show that it's like also has some 3D aspect to it. Because it's not like painted on her skin, so and we kind of do this here and erase away a little bit just so it looks like there's form to it. Just a little bit. Start wrapping this way. Yeah, this is hard to think about. And it's okay too if things aren't 100% accurate. You can have little goofs here and there, and no one will notice. As long as you don't point it out. Another little tip, unless somebody else is like a really seasoned artist, they're probably not going to notice your mistakes. And they're also, if they're a decent person, they're going to leave it alone and not bother you about it. So it's like also like actually like other artists and stuff like that is pretty rude. So you shouldn't do that anyway. It's funny too because like I know people get like really upset about people saying things about like their artwork. Usually those people are not artists themselves, so they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So don't even worry about them. Like their opinions literally don't matter because they couldn't produce the same thing if they tried. So I see that all the time. Like, oh, I got negative comments. It's like, well, was that person even an artist? Like, or are they just some rando that's like, just saying some dumb shit? 9 times out of 10, they're just some fucking rando who has no idea how to do it themselves. So who cares? Especially if it's on Twitter, that person is just out to like ruin your day. So don't listen to anything anybody tells you on Twitter. There are literally just hateful people on there that just try to fuck up people's days. So they're not worth your time or effort. Twitter's just like a cesspool for toxicity. Took me so long yesterday to like cancel my Twitter account. I was so mad. It was pissing me off so bad. Especially since they were still charging me for premium. And I'm like, bro, uh-uh. That's initial band here. Keeps it tight a little bit. This way. See what I'm doing. And I'm so glad that it's not as hot today. I was like super roasting last night and yesterday. It was awful. Keep in mind where the legs are. They're going to make a little bit of difference in folds here. Go ahead and save. Second up lines and some spots here. Theme here. Save. Also, if you notice, I like to bounce around the image because if I focus on one area for too long, I will kind of like zone out and get complacent. So try to move around to different spots and like work on them in chunks here and there. Just keep my eyes a little bit fresher, you know, not looking at the same spot forever. Need to actually this one too. The only thing advice I would give, like bouncing around, is to also like double check that you didn't leave any areas undone. But you know, rule of thumb is pretty much like do most of your like focus work up at the top at the focal point area. I only do stuff down here too because like I just trying to like practice the structure, but it's really not quite as necessary. It's just for my own peace of mind. Eh, fine, I want. Oh my goodness. Ugh. Excuse me. Oh my god, Neff, I just realized you actually used bits there. Thank you. To do that. Oh my god, I'm super late on that, man. I apologize. Thank you. Now I have to make the save thing. I really need to make it. I need to stop being a lazy bitch and actually do it. Alright, we got the dress, so I just need finish up the hair and the other hand. And then the lines are done. A little bit better. Yeah, yeah, they're up here. Some of it's coming on the side here. Figure that out in a sec. Some volume. Some of them this way. Looks like the hair is like kind of layered a little bit. It's not fully straight. It's okay. And it'll make it a little more interesting too to overlaps. the one. And I used to do like lines like this on like separate layers because it was a little bit easier, but then I lose track of like what layer is what, and I ended up confusing myself, so I'll just take the time to erase them. Less of a headache. It only takes a second to erase them and fix lines, so not a big deal. I don't know. I think it's important to draw through the lines because it's hard. It's harder to like imagine like exactly how they would connect from one side to the other. It also helps you with line confidence. That way you don't have like, like shaky lines or the scratchy lines. Just draw all the way through those bastards and then erase away what you don't need. Stop. Random things. So I think we're gonna do for this stream is we're gonna finish up the line work, and I will have to work some stream till Friday. Might still have some more Friday. We'll see. I do have commission work I do have to work on in between, so should save a bunch of this for Friday stream. Oh, oh well, that's fine. Got distracted by my own yapping. Eh, I think one of the favorite things about the way I do line work now is once I do my little line work like finishing trick, even as some of the lines are a little like, not perfect, the little finishing technique like really just like makes it go away like altogether. It's like, what? Nothing. You didn't see that. And again, most people aren't going to be like looking at your work under a microscope. They're generally going to be looking at it from a cell phone, so it's going to be a tiny little screen. So you just want to do your best to make sure that the overall like form and everything and your values are right so they don't all bleed together on that tiny little screen that people are going to be viewing it on. Like I used to be like super perfectionist and now I'm just like that's just too much. I just can't. I'll never make it anywhere if I like work on making every little thing perfect because it never will be 100% perfect anyway. And sometimes the imperfections actually improve the artwork, like the energy and the feeling and the overall look. Like especially when it comes to line work. Like I really like super sketchy like line work, but I don't know why I can't commit to it. Like I think it looks really cool and energetic and dynamic. Like especially like, one of my favorite like animators slash like artists, Sushio, has like really, really like scratchy, like energetic line work. And like Murata, like these excellent artists. They just know exactly like what they're doing, like where to put the energy and that kind of thing. So it's probably just practice. Just knowing when and where to do it and when to tweet it up. Some information here at least. Just a bit. One thing that sucks about these texture brushes is they don't make great erasers. Like you really have to press and go over it. That's what I liked about the mapping pen is it was like a super sharp erase. So you know what? Speaking of which, and I just gotta add some of the texture back in where I erase. Show that. So continuing to bring it. I'm kind of debating whether I want like some kind of goes like that might look just to waste a little bit of like a spacing there to have like a separate value just to make it work the way I want. And we'll have a little bit of space in here between the hair, some negative space. Feel like it doesn't have enough. That way it doesn't like muddy up like the silhouette of the whole thing. Like, you know, if I were to turn this whole thing black, I don't want it to be like completely unrecognizable. Of course, with the foreshortening, that doesn't exactly line up. You know what? Would have to have like some negative space around the hand for that to work. 100%, but we can do a little bit here and there to kind of, you know, have some negative space. Plus, her hair only goes like a little bit like to her butt here, so I'm not trying to make it too long. This way. I also want to have like room for like the threads and any of the effects that I'll add as a foreground element. So gotta leave some space for that because the background's already fairly busy. Sometimes being an artist means you do a bunch of work on something and then you really look at it and you go, "Do I really need this?" I feel like that's when you mature as an artist. Is like, you know, you realize that hey, all this like glitz and glam sometimes is a bit much. Let me dial it back. Not all pretty things are jingling keys. You don't want like the audience's eyes to literally get tired like looking at it because there's just so much to take in. I am guilty of this a lot, so don't don't say I don't do this every now and then, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I go overboard. I can use a lot of values and stuff in there for the hair. I don't want to put too much detail there. Give me more room to play with rendering and values. Plus, it's like way farther away from the face, so I don't want to overload the details away from the main part of the subject. It's actually good for me to say these things out loud because then I remember to do them. I don't always think about these things on my own. I'm like, wait a minute. I should listen to the own advice I just blabbed out. Like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Give myself a medal. All right, that's good for the hair. I just got this other hand here. Yeah, stretch. Oh my goodness. All right, final stretch of the lines. I was like obsessed with this song when I first heard it. Even though I'm like terrified of tornadoes, I used to love this movie for some reason, the Twister movie. I don't know why. Probably why I have so many nightmares of being killed in tornadoes. Also, I don't know what the song has anything to do with anything in the movie. Yeah, the lyrics really have nothing to do with the movie. Stop it. Say This way. Some of this goes. But again, it's not painted on there. I mean, I guess it's kind of loosely like I would get, you got sucked up by a tornado because they were like storm chasers. But I don't know. Things in the 90s that didn't always make sense. In fact, they often didn't. Especially music. I mean, shit, I was a huge Bush fan, and I have no idea what those lyrics like. What? You talk about, Gavin? You handsome son of a bitch. That's how he gets away with it. They're like, ah, he's hot. He can say whatever the hell he wants. Doesn't have to make sense. It's like interviews with like famous people when they get caught off guard without their like PR team. They're like, oh shit, I have to answer a question without like a scripted answer. Uh, don't act like you're on drugs. Don't act like you're on drugs. Fuck. It may be tedious, but it's worth it to make things look like they're actually a little bit 3D. Looks way better. There we go. That looks good. That just so I can see the hand a little bit better. Meat on the hand here. So that's for the rest of that. Reiki. Hell yeah. All right. Sketch off. Screen. All right. And now for the finishing touches on the lines, what I do is I duplicate the line layer and then I set the blending mode to multiply. And this is a pretty high resolution piece, so I'm going to Gaussian blur it by 20%. Yeah, it's the bandages around her arms. Yep. And then what you do after that is you can make the initial line layer underneath the normal one. You can select it and set that as a reference layer. And then you take your wand, select the outside of the image, and then you're gonna go to multiply. You're gonna delete the outside. Oops. So the fuzz isn't on the outside, it's only on the inside. And then you can invert that selection, go underneath all of the lines, take a normal layer, and just fill it with a color. And that way all of your colors and everything will be clipped to this particular part of it. So let me go ahead and make my folders here. Lots. And Sure that I color code everything. You know what? You guys can't see my layer work at all. I just realized that. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll have to move my VTuber model somewhere or put like a thing like some sort of like overlay or something. Colors. And stick her both of her layers in a folder. I'll just label that. And then what I usually like to do is I'm gonna clip every single thing I do over top of the like the whole folder with like the lines in the base. I'm gonna set the blending layer to brightness, go to render, Perl and noise, and I'm gonna set it for 1 point at the very top. And then I'm gonna take that opacity down to 20%, so that gives it a little bit of noise. And then I usually like to put a texture of some kind, usually like a watercolor texture over top of it as well. Makes it look less digital. So I'll go to my image materials, scroll through the millions of image materials I have, and then I'll pick like, one of these that makes it kind of look like it's watercolor. Let's do try this one. That on it. I'll also clip it to it. Expand it so it covers the whole thing. Maybe rotate it a little bit so we get some of the negative space in there too. Kind of like that. And I'll rasterize it. Also turn that to brightness. And then take that down as well to around 20%. And that gives it overall like some like texturing, that kind of thing, so it'll look nicer. Go ahead and let's turn our background back on. And then we can turn some of the effects on here so we can see where this is going. There we go. Make this nice and big so you guys can see. So yeah, I think it's a pretty damn good start here. Let me go ahead and save before I forget. And like I said, I will probably do like some of the boring stuff off stream. Like I'll probably do the I'll do like all the flats, and then we can finish this up on Friday for that stream. So let me go ahead and throw you guys in the lobby here so we can do a wrap up. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me while I worked on Suitree's OC here. This has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I am going to be moving. The winners of the stream will have to participate on Patreon. This reward tier will only be $1, so it's not like a huge change. But anyway, if you like the kind of content I do, please follow me to see when I go live. If you have Amazon Prime, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That would help me out tremendously. I will be back on Friday, gonna take a break tomorrow. Hope you guys have a wonderful week till then, and I will catch you then. Bye bye.